And welcome to a new Energy Crew podcast with me, your host, JP Warren. I want to thank everybody out there for tuning in on this special. Every Energy Crew podcast is special. I think the conversations, how they're candid, how they're natural, how they grow, and what we do on Energy Crew a podcast is very similar to kind of what we're going to be doing at Exec Crew, which is the company that is bringing you this Energy Crew podcast. And what we're going to be talking about is, people's passions, what drives them, people's strengths, people's vulnerabilities. We're all, people's like celebrating, people's successes and achievements, but we also deal with some struggles and vulnerabilities as well. And Exec Crew is going to be a limited membership networking group that's going to be there to elevate people's networks and knowledge when we're going to have different leaders, founders that are going to be not only teaching what their passions and strengths are, but also learning from other members. So if you're interested about learning more about that, head over to connectioncrew.com under Exec Crew to learn more and also apply today because it is limited membership and that's it. So it's limited membership. So if you're interested in applying, learn more about that and head over there now. And I'm excited. Obviously, if you enjoy these episodes and all that stuff, feel free to share, tag, like, subscribe, talk about it around the lunchroom, break rooms, wherever you're at. If you're working from home, talk about it in the kitchen. Piss off your spouse. I love it. But that's what we're all about. So I am happy to bring on our new guest for this week, which is Ryan Walker, who is, which actually is kind of a cool scenario. He's the Senior Vice President of Federal Affairs at Shumaker Advisors. And Ryan, I'm excited about this because first off, a lot of reasons. I'm very fascinated about kind of the government side, the government relations, and kind of how our industry is represented in the government, and kind of the connections that are made and the conversations that are having. So honestly, this is kind of a new topic, a new area. You're in a new field, a realm, if you will, as a guest, and I'm happy to have you here because I'm gonna ask a lot of stupid questions, man. Hope you're okay with that.
No, happy to ask away.
All right. Well, first off, okay, let's start it off. So I'm recording this in Houston, Texas. Ryan, where are you at right now? Are you up in DC?
Yeah. So I live just outside of the Washington D.C. area in Northern Virginia, about 10 miles from the city.
Okay. So all right, I love this. I want to dive into this real quick. At first, I want to find out a little bit of background about you. Okay. So for those that are tuning in their cars, in the gym, wherever they're listening to this. I kind of want to get like an elevator summary on kind of your background, who you are, where you've been, where you're at today. And then I just want to kind of just open up the topic, kind of find out how you got into your role right now, what you dig about it, and any, stories or anything like that people can kind of get involved and kind of tune in more on kind of the environment of the political realm when it comes to the energy space. So start us off with who you are. Who are you?
Yeah, JP, first of all, thanks for having me. I think this is great. This is a great opportunity. And look, I'm born and raised in Ohio, from a small town called Defiance, Ohio. Moved to Washington.
By the way.
What's that?
What a great name for a town, by the way. Okay.
Yeah, people think they either know of the town because they watched. I've never watched an episode, I'll be honest, but people tell me that it's referenced on the show Scandal. I don't know, but or people are like, I don't, it's just a small little Midwestern rural town in Northwest Ohio. Did my undergrad at Kent State University. And then after I graduated from Kent, I moved to Washington and have been here for about 22 years. Started on Capitol Hill as just a lowly, staff assistant answering phones. And, I was given a great opportunity by the late Congressman Paul Gilmore and kind of to.
So wait, I obviously want to hear about this journey because I think you'll be brushing over a lot of things that you're probably used to kind of spieling, around the table, but I'm not. So how did you go from Ohio again to, were you always passionate about the politics? Talk to me about that.
No, actually, I've always liked politics, even in high school and things like that. But I grew up in a law enforcement family, and I went to school and got my criminal justice degree. And I thought I was going to go be in federal law enforcement. I, got a conditional offer of employment from the DEA and said, hey, all you got to do is pass a background check, go to training and all this other kind of stuff. And then the government went on a hiring freeze, and I was kind of like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I'd always had an interest in politics, and someone said, well, you ought to go and maybe talk to your local congressman. So I went and had a conversation with his chief of staff. His name is Mark Wellman, and he gave me, the guy gave me my first opportunity on the, I said, look, I want to move to Washington, and I was going to go to, I was going to work on Capitol Hill, and then also get my master's degree at George Washington University, which I did.
Yep.
And so I did both. And I thought, even my now wife said, well, we're only going to be in DC for 3 years. And then we'll move out and we'll go and get my law enforcement career started, or we'll move back to Ohio. Okay. Well, that never happened and materialized. And we're here 22 years, and people call it Potomac fever. And I think I caught it. I've been here for 22 years, and it's been a blast raising my family here now. And it's
what is that like? I mean, I think that's so interesting to kind of like go up there. It's like people, who want to like either break out in the oil field. How did you start in the oil field? Or go, break out in Hollywood. Like, what'd you do? Like, I just went there and started talking to someone. What was that experience like for you? I mean, like, kind of like, how do you position yourself and talking to like a senator or a congressman? Like, I want to come here and move here and live here. What do you want to do? I don't know. Like, I mean, how does that conversation go from I want to do something here to saying, okay, well, you're moving here? I mean, what does that look like?
It's, there's no one right way or no one path to any in politics at all. So what I did was, when I found myself, I was, interested. I was going to graduate school at George Washington University. I needed a job. I'm like, okay, I started emailing and calling the chief of staff to my member of Congress, and I didn't hear from him. So finally, my girlfriend, now my wife, and I drove out to Washington. I was just going to do an airdrop of my resume. I was going to print about 400 copies of it and walk around Capitol Hill and just drop them off at offices. And I walked in to my congressman's office, and I said, hey, I'm looking for Mark Wellman. And he's like, that's me. And I said, hey, I'm the guy that's been emailing you and calling you incessantly. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. This was after 9/11. And he's like, I got called up to my reserve unit. Okay. I've been out. He goes, do you have time now? And I said, I've got all the time in the world. So we ended up having about an hour and a half long conversation. And then the congressman's assistant called me and said, hey, I was already back in Ohio at this point. And said, hey, the congressman would like to meet with you at his local office in Ohio. Can you be here at such and such time? Absolutely. So I went out there. I met with his chief of staff and the congressman. They said, hey, we really don't have a spot, but we think we can use you in Washington. Would you be interested in some kind of a hybrid role? And I said, look, yes. Okay. Yes is the answer. So they hired me. They brought me on to kind of this staff assistant legislative correspondent role, where I was writing letters to constituents. I was answering phones. I was leading tours for constituents. And that's just kind of how it started.
Okay. So tell me about, I guess, your career progression from where you started out, I guess, writing these letters to constituents and all this stuff, answering phones, doing tours and all this stuff. What led you into the energy space? What was that like for you? Had you any background previously
no.
in energy? No, none at all.
Absolutely not. No, I didn't. Like I said, I didn't come from an oil gas family or an energy family. Right. It was just I enjoyed the policy. I started getting into it, and then when I was the legislative director for Congressman Gilmore, when he passed away in office, unfortunately. And then I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. But the gentleman who was elected to replace him, now Congressman Bob Latta, asked me to stay on to be his chief of staff. Okay. So I went from a pure policy role to a more of a management role, where I ran his official government and his political operation. And I did that. I was his chief of staff for 8 years. And in that process, we were, he's a great guy. He's a true legislator's legislator, and he's very interested in policy. And, we kind of went through this iteration of what committee he wanted to be on. And in Congress, they have these gradations of committee. They have A committees, B committees, and then kind of everything else.
Okay, so what's A and B? How do you kind of just like, are the A committees the committees that have the most impact, and the ones that like you want to be in? The ones, what are they?
So A committees are your appropriations committee, ways and means committee, so tax writing and revenue policy, your financial services committee, which handles everything from Wall Street to your local banks and then some, and now even cryptocurrency, to my favorite committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee. It has the broadest jurisdiction of any committee in Congress. And I think at one point, I don't know if it's still true to this point, it had oversight over about 1/5 of the U.S. economy, from healthcare to energy to telecommunications to technology policy. And it was a committee that had a reputation of working on a bipartisan basis. Even though there was disagreements, they often worked, and they still do to this day, frankly, they work in a very bipartisan basis.
Okay.
And we agreed and like, okay, we're going to go for this committee. So we did all the things that we needed to do, showed our interest, showed our commitment. And then back in 2010, so about 2 years, year and a half after he was elected to Congress, we were granted a seat on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and then started to work from there to where now Congressman Latta is a subcommittee chairman on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and poised, in the future to be the chairman of the full committee.
Okay, so walk me back a little bit. There's a lot to unwrap here. First off, no, which is great, because I probably have a lot of stupid questions.
No. There are no stupid questions.
So okay, so currently today, what does Ryan do today for the for the government affairs, for Shumaker Advisors, for what do you do today for the energy policy and all that?
So look, I'm a lobbyist. I wear like the scarlet L, either it's lobbyists or lawyers are kind of the two most hated professions. But, frankly, what we do is embedded in the Constitution. In the First Amendment, it says the people have the right to petition their government for the redress of grievances. Okay. And that's where lobbyists come in is, if you think about it, everybody has a lobbyist somewhere. Like if you're involved in, if you're in an AARP, you have a lobbyist.
And so for those that kind of aren't familiar with government and all that stuff, like, so a lobbyist pretty much is someone that goes in there, kind of provides information, tries to kind of, is it swaying a decision, or is it providing information for a decision? I mean, what does that look like? How would you define it?
So we're advocates. And I break it up. We educate first, and then we advocate second. So we educate them on the policy, both our position and the opponent's position. Okay. We have to understand the opposition, and then we make asks. We advocate, and look, I mean, members of Congress and their staff are free to say, "Hey, we like that," or go pound sand. Right. So I spent my career I spent 14 years in government, 5 years as an in-house lobbyist at a super major, and now as a multi-client lobbyist. So we do everything from energy to transportation to, you name it. But we spent our time understanding what I call the 4 Ps: the people, the policy, the politics, and the process. So we understand the people who make the decisions, and who are involved in government. So the members of Congress, the staff, the regulators, the policy, what are we talking about? The process, how does it move through Congress? This isn't, this isn't Schoolhouse Rock. This isn't how a bill becomes a law. It's the sausage is made much, much differently. Okay. And, we understand that process, but most importantly, I think people miss out on the politics, because politics drives policy, and politics drives a process. Politics drive people. It's all about politics, and that's not being negative on everything. No,
that's how it is. It's not negative, but I can see how there is some gray area. There's a lot of area for interpretation. It's like, okay, well, politics sway this, but what's going to cause this, to shift? Why would this person shift their decision? What political driving attachment is pulling them this way, that way? There seems to be a lot to the pot.
Yeah, I mean, look, you have 535 members of Congress. You have the White House. You have the regulatory agencies. But specifically, I'll focus on, both Congress and the regulatory agencies. Congress, you have 535 members. Like I said, you have, and each one of those 535 members have their own agenda.
Yeah.
Whether you're a representative representing a district, or you're a senator representing an entire state. Yeah. You each have your own agendas. You each are up for an election at some point and want to get reelected. You each have, different concerns in your states or districts driving that process. So it's ultimately, it's the greatest form of government in my opinion, because you get all of these, this cornucopia of interest and concerns and politics, and you're mixing them all together, and then you're coming out with a lot of times with a policy that's passed both houses of Congress and is signed by the President of the United States. It's a messy process, but it is the best process in the world.
How do you say? Okay, I want to put a pin in this question, so please bring me back to it. I want to talk about kind of the energy climate and kind of in your realms, in your circles, and kind of what you deal with. But talk to me about, I want to hear it real quick. I want to go back to kind of this, the whole messy process, but it's the best process. You go in it, everyone's got their own, every person's bowl is filled with something else, something different, what drives them, what motivates them. Do you have to be wired a certain way to thrive and function in an environment like that? Or, how do you stay, I guess, motivated? Because it seems like such a grind. And the persistence of someone would outweigh, I guess, the cause and good of something. The persistence of something, it's like, whatever, just give it to them. Like, how do you stay motivated in this environment?
Yeah, it takes a special kind of person. Not like we're unique or anything, but I tell people, look, I'm a professional extrovert. I'm a professional extrovert. Like I spend most of my time on Capitol Hill, and talking with members, talking with staff, just getting to know them on a personal level. Okay. And then when I come home on the weekends, I'm like, nobody talk to me.
Yes.
Because my social meter is on empty. Right. No. But so then but you have to balance that obviously with being a dad and a husband and all that kind of stuff as well. But, you have to be willing to go and just talk to people and get to know them. And get to know them on a genuine level, because Washington can be and is often seen as a very transactional town.
Yeah.
But the people who are here for a long time get to know everybody. Look, it's the biggest small town in America, and where everybody knows everybody and everybody's business, and about everything, and it's your reputation. It's your, you have to be honest. Look, if you're not, I ride on my name. Do people trust me? Do people believe me? If I ever lie to anybody, then I'm done. Look, I'm always going to be honest with people and say, look, here's what I think, and they'll say, well, what do you think we should do? And especially when I was a chief of staff and my boss would look to me and say, hey, what should we do here? You always have to take everything into account and give them the best advice with the best information and the most relevant information as possible, and then let them make their decision.
What's interesting, Ryan? So like before we had this conversation, like first off, I didn't realize. How about this? My perceived stereotype of lobbyists, if you live in Washington, is pretty much based, House of Cards and every single other political, whatever it is show that's out there, like whatever. But what you're describing is, I feel like there's a huge characteristics that are very similar to the oil field, to the energy industry, which is your name does mean everything. It is a small town. You can't be going in line out your side of your mouth this way and talking to someone completely different. And it's a small town. The oil and gas industry, the oil and gas space is, I feel like it's exactly the same. You have your name, you have your reputation. You have to be ethical. You have to have a lot of trust, and you have to be genuine with people. And I love the fact you're talking about the transactional conversations are so heightened in DC, because we're seeing that as well here. So it kind of sounds like we're kind of doing the same thing. You obviously on a grander, bigger, more impactful scale, but it kind of sounds like, it is kind of the same environment, same atmosphere, and you really kind of need the same characteristics.
Yeah, look, I mean, what we do, we lobby for a multitude of different clients, and we're not just helping the big guys. We don't represent any super majors or anything like that. We're representing oil field service companies, small, mid-size, medium, or small and medium-size, oil and gas companies, things like that, because their voice matters too. And frankly, sometimes even more, because they're the ones who are doing it here at home. And
like I said, Ryan Keys last about that. Yeah, giving those smaller operators, not the super majors, a voice.
Their voice matters. And look, and you have a lot of different. I often term ourselves, we're a newer firm. The law firm that we're part of a larger law firm that's been around for 100 years. But in terms of our Washington operation, I started that about 2 years ago, and have brought on 2 other guys to join me. We're fully bipartisan, and we're sort of an insurgent in the Washington market. We're taking the smaller clients. We're doing, things to help, because we love it and we're passionate about it. Look, I love oil and gas. We're never going to be without oil and gas. But there's also this issue of not just the people. It's often termed as the energy transition. I term it as the energy expansion.
Yes.
And because it's not just it's hydrogen. It's everything else. Sustainable aviation fuel. Everything that goes along with it. But oil and gas isn't going anywhere. Petrochemicals, everything like that. It's going to be around. Otherwise, we're not. People won't be able to drive their Teslas because they won't be able to make plastic.
Well, let me ask you a question. So it seems like the energy reality. So obviously, we've talked about this before. I'm excited to have you on our other podcast, Energy Facts Chats with Mike Umbro. We're discussing energy expectation, energy realities. So it sounds to me like people understand. So sitting in Houston, 3,000 miles away from DC, just like a lot of people, in the States, sitting this far away, you see these headlines come out. You see these decisions come out that are often, we see that are kind of politically driven, okay? Like what we're seeing come out is not realistic. It's the energy realities aren't meeting energy expectations. Is there really that big of a disconnect, or is it just people or is it just kind of the political parties? Obviously, we don't have to get into this. Is it just kind of them kind of filling their boat to get that reelection? Like they understand that oil and gas can be around longer than 10 years, or we need a mix of all sources of energy and not make one a villain and phase it out. Is there really that big of a disconnect, or is it kind of an understanding, or is it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Let me put it this way. Elections have consequences.
Okay.
And everyone needs to have a voice in the process. And this is like my PSA, I guess. People need to vote. People need to get involved in the government process, from the smallest company to the largest company.
Okay.
And, engaging through lobbyists or trade associations or anything like that are always important. But you have the media driving narratives of the most vocal portions of each party.
Right.
My former boss, Congressman Latta, who I talked about, he's a legislator's legislator. He's going to talk to the other side. He's not going to.
Isolate, and not work with them.
Right. He's not going to isolate himself, but he's also not going to give up or just abandon what he believes in. Right. He's not just going to leave that on the table, but he'll work with the other side to try and get an answer. And I think a lot of members of Congress are that way.
And not all. You don't see that these days. Because what you read is like there's no working together. There's no this. There's this agenda and this agenda. There's nothing working together. And that's what you see on the news.
That's wrong. I'll just say that's wrong. That's the media driving a narrative. That's the media, that's the fringes on both sides, both parties wanting to be the loudest voices in the room to help drive that media narrative. But that couldn't be further from the truth. You have people like, Speaker McCarthy, who's bringing people to the table to have conversations. You have the chairman or the chairwoman of the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House, Kathy McMorris Rogers, who's working with Frank Pallone, the ranking member, the Democrat, and trying to create solutions. Joe Manchin, a Democrat, working with John Barrasso from Wyoming. They're working together to try and get solutions. Now, there'll always be hyperbole out there, people wanting to get on Twitter or in front of the camera, but no one talks about what's really going on behind the scenes.
Well, first off, Brian, that's extremely refreshing to hear. I mean, dude, it really is. I mean, it's be on my side, you saying, no, actually, people actually do work together. Right? But what is the actual, you're sitting around, you have these discussions, you see these lofty goals, and obviously you don't have to speak to this too much if you can't. But you walk into a room, you have people on both sides of the party. There's obviously a reality when it comes to energy supply, energy dependency, energy this, energy that. Is it kind of what's those conversations? I mean, how do those transpire?
Those conversations transpire with real experts at the staff level. A lot of the times, that's where we start when we have conversations. It's not going directly to the members because the members are pulled, and it's just a function of the job. They're pulled in so many different directions by committee hearings, committee meetings, constituent meetings, all this other kind of things that take away from their time and attention. What we're doing is we're going to the staff and we're having these conversations with subject matter experts. The speaker.
And let me ask you a question: are they actually experts, or is it just are they just kind of got appointed there and not experts?
No. I think that most people who are in issue specific jobs, whether it be energy or technology or pick an issue, right? They're in that because they're passionate about it. They're in there because they want to learn more. They're not just sitting in their congressional offices. It's like I said, this is August, right? So it's a congressional recess. So a lot of them are out either visiting companies, talking with, people on the ground. They're going to their boss's district to meet with different companies. They're having these meetings so that they can fill themselves with the knowledge to go and serve the constituents better, to serve, if you're in a leadership position, to serve the American people better. Okay.
So how do you measure? I mean, so it seems like for some reason it just feels like the environment, the realm, and the field that you take every day is a battlefield. The whole term fighting battles and losing wars. How do you measure your success, your impact? Because it is such an impactful, I guess, stage that you're on. How do you measure that person?
So it's not like, so I mean, working at an oil and gas company and working with clients now who are engineers, it's not, you have to learn to kind of, I guess, speak engineer a little bit. And you have to get them to understand that what I do and what we do here in Washington isn't a linear process. It's not start at A, end with Z. It can go from A to B to C to D, all over the place, right? It could even include some numbers in there. Yeah. But it's, what we do is just getting people to understand that, a win for us is, let me use a real relevant example. So we represent a company called Southern Rock Energy Partners.
All right.
They're looking to build the first refinery in the United States since 1977. And it will be a refinery, a next-gen refinery that'll capture about 90 or 95% of the process emissions. Okay. And we brought the CEO, Steve Ward, who is an amazing guy. We brought him to Washington because they site selected in Cushing, Oklahoma to build this refinery. And we met with, Senator Lankford. We met with Senator Mullen. We met with all the other Oklahoma House delegation members to talk to them about the project. That's a win because before that, all they knew was about either they read something in the paper or their staff told them. But we brought the CEO here, to hear directly from the horse's mouth as to what they're looking to do, how they're looking to do it, and what the ultimate, result will be. And, everybody in the Oklahoma delegation was super excited, as you can imagine. And they're like, yes, we want you here. Let us know how we can help. And that's the thing. A lot of these regulatory agencies, whether you're dealing with NEPA or Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, you're getting roadblocks. And oftentimes the regulatory agencies aren't there to help you. They're there to stop. They often work to stop things. So we're working with the elected leaders, elected members of Congress to help them, either steer clear or get over these hurdles as efficiently as possible.
You're kind of advising them to kind of deal with all this stuff. Well, so being in DC, being 3,000 miles away. Yes, you're near PA and all that stuff, the Northeast Marcellus. How do you keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the energy space? I mean, is that through your company in Ohio feeding you information? Is that through just kind of you stay on top of the news or Twitter or whatever? How do you find your information, stay up to date on, I guess, what's happening in the energy space with you being in DC?
Yeah, so I read all the time. There is just a
what do you read?
Almost too much information. So I read, Politico puts out a daily publication called Morning Energy. I'm reading Axios. I'm reading the Houston Chronicle. I'm reading Bloomberg Energy, and anything energy I can get my hands on.
Okay.
And always interested in more. If there's folks out there that want to recommend things for me to read, I'd be happy to read those. And then I talk to people. There's no substitute for talking to people. I come to Houston, at least once a quarter, because I have clients that are in Houston, friends. So I get down. I love Houston. I get down there quite a bit, and I set up lunches, I set up coffees, just to talk to people. And it's one of the best things that I can do, because not only am I learning, it's also for me is, it's marketing too. It's business development. So talking with people, and a lot of people, like you were talking about, JP, that don't know what lobbyists do, don't know what lobbyists are, or have a negative connotation, to what they do. But we're actually here to help.
But that's the thing, though. So there's a lot of people right now kind of, sitting in the energy realm, energy space. We're talking about, the future of the industry, this, that, all that stuff. Obviously, they're brought in by the news articles and this about, worker tech and all that stuff. Let's kind of pull back from that. How can people, I guess, number one, learn more about kind of how they can get involved and support kind of energy realistic policies, right? Pro all energy policies. And kind of, I guess, keep in touch with what you're doing. I mean, where would the support be on your side from people like me, being in Texas, or people in Oklahoma or Denver or something like that are listening to this? How can people, I guess, get plugged in a little bit more, or kind of stay in touch with you, or kind of go along for the ride?
Yeah, look, people can have. I'm happy on my LinkedIn page. You can message me on LinkedIn. I think my email and phone number are on LinkedIn. I'm very accessible. I'm happy to help anybody.
How could you help someone? How could they help you, and how could you help someone?
So look, a lot of companies, maybe they're small or medium sized, especially in the oil field or oil field services. They're like, wow, they don't have these dedicated teams. I think Ryan Keyes brought up that good point. They don't have these dedicated teams that can help them manage the regulatory process, manage the legislative process, because you don't just have to accept what the government throws at you. You can work to change the law. You can work to change regulations.
Okay.
What we do is we're like a dog with a bone for our clients, right? We'll go up and meet with members of Congress, with their staff. We'll go in and meet with regulators, with career staff at EPA or at DOI or at DOE, and we help these folks navigate that regulatory and legislative morass, for lack of a better term, so that they're not just they don't have to just accept or become a victim of the process. They get to engage the process.
So you encourage when you encourage people that that have smaller service companies, smaller operators, something like that are in the energy realm that do want to have a voice, do want to have some skin in the game, to reach out to you, to kind of get involved and find out how to get involved. Because here's the deal: in my circles, in my realm, around the tables, around crew club events and all this stuff, you always hear about people talking about, well, we got to do something, or I wish we could do something. And, I wish someone would kind of hear my voice and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So would this be kind of something for people that do want to have that voice, do want to have that skin in the game, to reach out and say, hey, look, Ryan, whether you can help me out or not, or anything like that, I'm curious how I can help out. Would that be kind of something that you'd be interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not, people think, oh, well, Washington lobbyists are all expensive and everything like that. Look, we're a sophisticated startup, as I often say. We have, between myself and my two colleagues, Jason Wimay and Chris Salemi, we have probably 60 to 70 years of experience combined between the two of us here in Washington. And it is, we can help companies, whether there's one company that wants to engage us to help them, or whether there's maybe 2, 3, 4 smaller companies with a similar interest that want to combine resources to engage us to help them. We're all for that. We just want to make sure, frankly, I'm very passionate about energy policy. I'm very passionate about oil and gas. And it's not just, drill baby drill, and then, the heck with everything else.
Yep.
It's everything in totality. It's how can we reduce flaring? Because, if we're flaring, we're wasting resources.
Yep.
How can we do CCS? How can, do all of these different things? So it's not just drill and forget everything else. It's like, how can we help anyone? Well,
that's the thing. That's kind of why I'm happy we had this conversation today, because I think, kind of what you just touched on, like whether you're, if I'm a service company and I'm talking, 4 of my, service buddies, and I'm thinking, guys, we got to do something about this. This just isn't fair to, kind of the smaller this and that. We just listened to that #1 awesome podcast, Energy Crew podcast. We had Ryan on. Let's all team up and contact Ryan, see if there's something that we can do, see if there's something that we can do, because I like this, because I think there's a huge, for me at least, there is a huge network gap of, hey, look, we'll sit around the table and bitch, moan, and complain nonstop, but what can we do about it? Who can we talk to? And I feel like there's a huge disconnect on the networks or the knowledge, or just kind of how do you talk about this? So having you on this podcast, I think, is extremely impactful. And I think that I would hope that people kind of reach out and kind of contact you, even just say hello, introduce themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's important for people to engage the system, and whatever level, whether it's local government, state government, federal government, to just not accept not accept what comes at them all the time. They don't have to just they don't have to lay down and take it, or they can be an active part, whether it's filing comments for a rulemaking at EPA or anything like that, and then taking those comments to the Hill to talk to your members of Congress about, look, this is what we just submitted, and this is how it's going to impact our business. To build, there's layers. You have to build. It's not just filing comments and saying, oh, that's it. You can file comments, and then you start to build layers of political support.
God, that's fascinating. It really is fascinating, because I was thinking with so many different movers and pieces. I mean, you're talking about the 4 Ps, and obviously that 1 P is the most murky, but it's also most important with the political side. How do you prioritize, I guess, with so much going on? How do you not get okay? A couple questions. How do you not get caught up in an echo chamber? I think echo chambers are I think they're dangerous. You know what I mean? How do you get out of your echo chamber and hear opposing views and to have discussions with opposing sides where it's not just you're just supporting your own views and marching forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, look, I have friends on both sides of the aisles. I talk to them about all kinds of different policy and politics. Everything from the upcoming elections to what Congress is going to do this fall. I'm not just one of these guys who isolates myself into a Fox News echo chamber, so to speak. Right. I like people, and I like and we can disagree without being disagreeable. And that's something that I think the media doesn't get right, because people are disagreeing without being disagreeable, but they're just saying these people are ugly. All they do is yell at each other, and they can't agree on anything.
Well, I've heard that people put on shows. It's usually the loudest people that behind closed doors, they're very different, and once the cameras are on, they put on shows. So they have to put on shows. They have to be the personalities without naming them. So what else can people do to kind of get involved and reach? I mean, how can people, I guess, make a big? How about this? I want to ask you, what is the biggest stereotype or non-truth out there about lobbyists or energy policy that you can change, that you can kind of disprove right now? And I guess how can people get involved more to help you?
Yeah. So
that's
the biggest kind of misconception is that lobbyists are these kind of operate in these smoke-filled back rooms where secret deals are cut and things like that, and they lack moral compasses and all this other kind of stuff that really isn't the case. Like, I know I can speak for myself and my colleagues at Shumaker Advisors. Look, we operate differently. We're all men of faith, and we operate with that as our compass, our North Star. And we're operating that way, and we want to show people that advocacy is. We want to show them that it's hard, because it is. It's not just going into some smoke-filled back room with a cigar and a glass of bourbon and cutting a deal. It's hours, it's days, it's months, sometimes years of grinding to get to a point where you see legislative or regulatory action, and it's hard work, and it's fun work. I love it, and I love working that way for our clients. And people can get in touch with me. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably a real easy way. People can email me at rwalker@shumakeradvisors.com. People can look on our firm's website, shumaker.com. And, people can call me, 703-582-0249.
713.
Yeah. I'll talk to anybody. I want to help people. We're in the helping business.
I have one. Okay. So we're kind of coming over time. I understand that you got a busy day ahead. So do I. I got to just have one more thing. So
yeah,
when you first started working energy policy, okay, and this probably should have been the first question. How did it go from, this comes across my desk. Okay, I got this energy policy here. I'm going to go work on this. How did it go from your actual, this task before me today I need to work on, to having energy policy as a passion? When did that shift happen, and what did that feel like for you? I guess, do you understand my question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When did that happen?
So it was the summer of when I really that flipped the switch, so to speak. I think it was the summer of 2009 when we had gas prices were $4 or $5 a gallon. There was an energy crisis. Republicans in the House stayed during August, and there was a big it was political theater, really, to a certain extent, where the Republicans were in the minority, Democrats were in the majority. They shut the lights out in the chamber, they turned the microphones off, but Republicans were still there speaking on the floor, for the entirety of August, taking shifts to talk about energy policy. And it really shifted in me then, You always hear about, the long gas lines during the Carter administration and everything like that. But it was that moment for me that, like, look, this is, it's more than just going to the gas station and putting, gas in your vehicle. It's more than just flipping on the light switch. These are real things. And then it really cemented into me when I was interviewing. So I said that I worked at a super major. I worked at BP. I had the US CEO at the time. I had my final interview. It was with him, and he came in for, like, I think it was 90 seconds, because it was just kind of the last box to tick.
Right.
And he said, "Hey, I understand you're interested in working here." And he goes, "What we do here is we light, heat, and move the earth by providing people with reliable, affordable, and abundant energy. If you can get behind that, you have a place here." And I was like, sold.
That's it.
And I was like, this is fantastic. And you see what good energy policy does: lifts people out of poverty, provides people, access to the middle class. It provides them with, the ability to send their kids to college, to pay for their schooling. Yeah, put a roof over the head and food on their table. And this is a global issue. People in Africa, deserve that right just as much as we, do here in the United States. People in, Indonesia, should be afforded that right. Wherever there is energy poverty, we need to create energy wealth.
Well, I got to tag you up with old Chris Wright with Liberty Energy. You speaking that language right now. No, but honestly, I think, look, we're gonna wrap this up, but I think it's a great point. I mean, that you had. There's a lot. Like, for example, before I got in the industry, I just thought you just put the nozzle and fill up your car.
Yeah.
Switch on stuff. There is so much more to the energy space than people realize, and that's why it's so fascinating for me. And that's why there is no silver bullet. There is no silver bullet to energy issues. It's everyone working together, and it's a healthy energy mix. So, Ryan, I appreciate you taking the time on this. I would love to have you come back on.
Me too.
I look forward to seeing you in a couple. Actually, was that next week or the week after?
Yeah, next week, I think.
Yeah, dude, I'm looking forward to that. So
me too.
Well, Fruit Club event. We got Umbro coming in the house too, so that'd be exciting. But again, Ryan, I want to thank you and everyone out there for tuning into the Energy Crew podcast. And again, if you want to get in touch with Ryan, you can find him on LinkedIn, find him in the show notes, and reach out to him, say hello, introduce yourself, to learn more, or just say hi. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Energy Crew Podcast.